On today's show, I will break down 5 Mets that need to step it up soon so this team doesn't fall out of the race.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use the code all in lowercase LockedOnMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Now, the Mets lost another game on Tuesday. That is now their third loss in their last 4 games, all coming to the Angels and the Rockies. Their lone victory was against a team that is in the playoff race in the St. Louis Cardinals. So the Mets are playing down to their competition, or their competition is playing up to them. I thought the Rockies had a really good game today, particularly defensively. Ryan McMahon at third base was just an absolute killer. A lot of rallies ended in his glove, just the way that he was able to make plays, whether it was going across the bag on a backhand and throwing it from foul territory, or catching a hot shot hit right at him, or then going to his left, spinorama. I mean, this guy is so good. All-star and a Gold Glover, if I'm not mistaken, who is just really solid player. And throughout this game, things just didn't break the Mets' way. Really frustrating. And Luis Severino wasn't good either. And we'll talk about him a little bit more in the next segment as I break down the struggling players that need to step up. Severino working on a 9-start stretch that has just been brutal, and that has taken his ERA from a low 3s to over 4 after this outing, where he gave up 5 runs in 5 innings pitched, albeit with one of them being unearned. So 4 earned runs in 5 innings. Just a rough outing. And the Mets actually took a lead in this game, funny enough. They scored the first 2 runs in the second inning. Pete Alonso leadoff walk. Mark Vientos flew out. Jose Iglesias got a base hit. Luis Torrens hits one over the third base bag, and that was the play I was talking about. McMahon with the backhand in foul territory, throwing it over first base, somehow getting Torrens out. That did advance the runners, though, and Harrison Bader cashed him in with the base hit. So it was 2-0 Mets. That lead would not hold too long. Bottom of the second inning with 1 out, Luis Severino hit Brendan Rodgers with the pitch. Then he gives up a base hit to Chris Bryant. This was the unearned run. Brutal play for the Mets, where Harrison Bader makes a throwing error that gets past the cutoff man, starts rolling towards the dugout on the play to third. Mark Vientos trying to make a play to stop the ball, slides by the dugout to field it, comes up to maybe fire, I guess. No one was running at the time. As he comes up, he loses the ball in the transfer, and the netting of the Mets dugout, the visitors' dugout in Coors, was not secured for whatever reason. So the ball hits the netting and then just drops in the dugout. And nothing you could do about it. Ball's out of play. Runner automatically advances and scores. Chris Bryant advances to third, and that was the first run of the game. But there could have been another run scored in that inning, as there was a hot shot hit to Jose Iglesias right after that. He made an unbelievable play, backing up on a backhand, kind of coming away from home plate, then still deciding to fire and try to get Chris Bryant out instead of taking the safe out. He's able to pull it off, which was really a special defensive play to cut down a run. And for a brief moment, it kept the momentum on the Mets side, but that would all escape in the 4th inning as Luis Severino had a blow up, gives up a base hit, got a pop out, got a strikeout. So 2 outs, about to get out of the inning, gives up an RBI double to Elias Diaz. Then Jake Cave comes up. He's ahead in the count, tries to throw a fastball up in the zone. I think Torrens wanted it up and away. Severino only got it up, and it was still over the heart of the plate, even though it was at the absolute top of the zone at 98 miles per hour. And Jake Cave, who hit a crippling home run against the Mets in the last time that these two teams faced, does it again, opposite field. And really, that's the ball game. I mean, that home run really did the Mets in. Severino didn't really miss his spot by too much. Like I said, it was supposed to be a fastball up. That's where he threw it. But I guess you got to get it outside as well. Really, you could just tip your cap, though. It was a good piece of hitting from Cave. But just a frustrating game altogether. The Mets got one back in the 5th. Tyrone Taylor doubled. Brendan Nimmo drives him home with the single. But then Severino gives that run back as Brendan Rodgers hits an RBI double. the bottom half of that inning. Mark Vientos tried to make a play on it, hit off his glove, run comes around to score. So that was pretty much it when it comes to Severino's day. Like I said, 5 innings, 5 runs scored, 4 of them earned. Top of the 6th inning, the Mets had a chance. Pete Alonso ripped a leadoff single to get things going. Mark Vientos flew out. Jose Iglesias got a base hit as well to put runners at the corners. The Mets had Luis Torrens coming up, so Carlos Mendoza went for a pinch hitter, got Jesse Winker in the game for a chance to get his first big signature Mets moment, and he promptly hit into a double play ball to end that rally. Now, following inning, the Mets again had a chance. They got 2 runners in scoring position as Francisco Lindor had a 2-out single. Brandon Nimmo hit a double. Unfortunately, they held up Lindor on the play. It probably would have been a close one. I don't know if I would have pushed the envelope with Lindor running, but regardless, you had 2 runners in scoring position for JD Martinez to potentially tie the game, and he grounds out. So missed opportunity. Mets pretty much went down quietly after that. Frustrating game for the offense. The bullpen was okay. Huascar Brazaban with 2 scoreless innings. Alex Young had a rough inning where he gave up a run. And the Mets end up dropping the contest by a score of 6-3. If you look at the wild card race, the Mets are still sitting 1.5 games back. So that's not too bad. But the Diamondbacks and the Padres are starting to pull away a little bit. Those teams have been on a tear. The pathway right now, as it looks, and there's still plenty of time, but the current pathway to making the playoffs seems to be just leaping over the Braves, because the Braves are now sitting in the 3rd wild card spot, and they're looking like the most vulnerable team of that group. But the Mets got to pick it up. Okay, you lost now 3 games that you could have won. Severino pitches a little bit better today. If the Mets get a couple of those runs to cash in, you win this one. There was the Angels game where Brazaban gave up the home run, where the game was in hand before that homer, and that was a brutal one. And then, of course, you could have won that final game against the Angels as well, but just couldn't get the bats going. Now it's starting to become a pattern where the Mets lineup is not hitting, and that lineup is what carried them into this position. So can they get things going? I want to talk about some struggling Mets, including Severino, but also a lot of bats. So we're going to talk about those 5 players in just a minute. First, though, a word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you watch the winnings roll in. Get in on the daily action with your friends and become part of the Prize Picks community today. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. So you could turn $10 into $1,000. If you're looking for promotions, Prize Picks has got you covered every week. From lowering select player stat projections on Tuesdays to help your lineup hit, to getting your entry fees back if you have a losing lineup on Fridays. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That's code LOCKEDONMLB on Prize Picks for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy with Prize Picks. Stay up to date with all the latest in the world of sports by checking out Locked On Sports Today, streaming 24/7 on YouTube. All right, so let's talk about some Mets who need to step it up if this team wants to stay in the race. We'll start with the starting pitcher from tonight's game, Luis Severino. It's got to be better. As I mentioned, that ERA has ticked over 4. If you look back at Luis Severino's season, on June 13th, he held the Marlins to 1 run over 6 innings pitched and lowered his season ERA to 3.12. Since then, he has given up 4 or more earned runs in 5 of his last 9 starts. His ERA over those 9 starts is 5.51. He has given up 9 home runs during that span. Through his first 13 starts of the season, he gave up just 6 home runs. So the home run ball is clearly killing him. And when he has a bad start, it's not just that he's going out there and is getting knocked out of the game in 5 innings, but he's typically giving up 4 or more runs, and that just puts you behind the 8 ball to do anything. So Severino has to be better. It's pretty ironic because the Mets probably could have flipped him at the deadline and gotten a good piece for their future. Obviously, you don't know what he's going to do after the deadline. I hope he turns it around, but it's just crazy that this guy could be wearing down. I don't think that's outside of the question. You're looking at someone who has not pitched this many innings in a very long time. I mean, you're looking back to 2019, if I'm not mistaken. Let me look back at the career log real quick here. Yeah, 2019, that was when he got hurt. So 2018 is when he was the ace of the Yankees. They were 190 plus innings in back-to-back years. Has Tommy John, out 2019, out 2020. 2021 comes back but doesn't pitch much. 2022 pitches to a 3.18 ERA but only makes 19 starts, pitches 102 innings, and then ends up having to get shut down. Last year was a disaster for him. That's how he lands on the Mets on a one-year deal. He's at 22 starts right now, 128 and two-third innings pitched. Sean Manaea, on the other hand, is getting stronger as the season goes on. Severino, his last 9 starts have really been a struggle. So I don't know what the Mets are going to get from Severino from this point forward. I hope he can turn things around, catch a second win, and close out his season strong. But I was talking about on yesterday's show the idea of who you'd bring back. Obviously, the way he's pitching, not necessarily a guy you want to bring back, but even further, I mentioned on yesterday's show how Sean Manaea and Luis Severino would be the guys to take the ball in a playoff game. And for one, you got to get there, which is looking a little more doubtful by the day, depending on how this team continues to fare on this road trip. But I don't know if Severino is one of the top 3 starters on this team right now. He certainly hasn't pitched like it over those last 9 starts. So we'll see if he can turn things around. But that is a huge one for the Mets because you need him to be significantly better than he has been across this stretch. Another guy that has been struggling lately, JD Martinez. In May, JD Martinez, his first full month of the season, hit 278 with the 333 on base, a 495 slug, had 5 home runs, 13 RBIs. In June, he hit 272, 385 on base, 489 slug, 4 home runs, 20 RBIs. July, he hit 235, 326 on base, 358 slug, only 2 home runs, 13 RBIs. And he started off August with a 3-18 stretch. He's 0 for his last 10. He did hit that grand slam, so he's got 5 RBIs of the month because he had another RBI this month as well. But pretty brutal line altogether. And you look at his last 30 games played. JD Martinez is hitting 208, 317 on base, 330 slug, 3 home runs, 18 RBIs. Pete Alonso has caught a lot of flack, and it's about to catch some more in a minute. But JD Martinez has to be better. He's your DH. You need him to contribute. If not, you got Starling Marte coming out the IL soon. We'll talk about him in the next segment. Marte could be the DH right now, and he might give you more production than JD Martinez is giving you. He's got to step up. He's too good of a hitter to sit on the bench, but at a certain point, he's got to produce as well. So we'll see exactly how things continue for Martinez. But you also actually look at when this started. A lot of it really goes back to that whole issue with his cleats, and he had an ankle problem, and he had to sit out because he didn't have cleats to play in. Since then, for whatever it's worth, the guy's fallen into a real funk. Sometimes players can be like that, where one thing kind of throws them off their routine, especially guys meticulous as JD Martinez is, and it takes a while to get back on track. You would hope that that's going to turn around soon, but the Mets are playing with dropping Alonso in the lineup. JD Martinez has come up in a lot of spots lately. Tonight in particular, there was multiple opportunities where he had a chance to cash in a run with 2 outs and a runner in scoring position, and he just didn't get that hit, where earlier this season, he was coming through in all those spots, it felt like. So that's a big one for me. JD Martinez has to be better. I said Alonso was about to catch a little more flack. He's on this list. He's got to be. He had a decent run post-All-Star break where he played pretty well in that first week out of it, but overall, his last 30 games, Pete Alonso sitting 227, 315 on base, 418 slug, 5 home runs, 11 RBIs. 11 RBIs in a 30-game span. Even Martinez, who's been struggling, granted he has the benefit of a grand slam, but he has 18 RBIs. So Pete's got to be better than this. He's got to drive in runs with consistency. But I will say some of the at-bats haven't looked terrible today. He drew a walk, had a nice sharp base hit. His last at-bat was awful. That one was bad. 8th inning, struck out on 3 pitches. So we'll see if Pete can get things on track. I've spent enough time ragging on him this week, though, so we'll move on to Brandon Nimmo. Brandon Nimmo, over his last 30 games played, is hitting 217, 306 on base, 328 slug, 3 home runs, 16 RBIs. Nimmo had a good game tonight, so you give him a little bit of a pass, but consistently over the past month, he has not hit. There's really 2 guys who have. Francisco Lindor, and then out of the break, Jeff McNeil, and then I guess Jose Iglesias has been pretty good. Harrison Bader, actually, maybe there's 4. Tyrone Taylor's had his moments lately, but your most consistent producers from the past, as far as Alonso and Nimmo, struggling. A guy that has been one of the best hitters in baseball for a long time, JD Martinez, struggling. And also Francisco Alvarez, struggling. Last 30 games, he's hitting 253, 324 on base, 394 slug, 2 home runs, 11 RBIs. But here's the big thing for me. Last year, Francisco Alvarez hit 25 home runs. This year, he's got 5. 57 games played, if I'm not mistaken. Let me check on that stat to make sure I am right about it. But last year, I think it was like 119 games. So he's getting close to about half of the sample size from last year. And he's nowhere close to half the productions when it comes to home runs. Looking at it now. Okay, it is 57 games this year, 123 last year. So he's getting close to that. And last season, he drove in 63 with 25 home runs. Now, he only hit 209 last year. This year, he's hitting 267. Last year, he had a 284 on base. This year, it's 330. So those two stats are better, but his slug has gone down, and you expect this guy to hit home runs. That hasn't happened lately. So the Mets really need to see Alvarez start to come through offensively. And, of course, Nimmo, Alonso, Martinez right in the middle of that lineup. Those guys got to step up, because if they aren't going to, I don't know how you can shift things, but maybe you need to put Jeff McNeil somewhere in the top of this lineup so that Francisco Lindor has a running mate that can maybe drive him in, because Lindor's getting on base and is getting stranded a ton. Really frustrating. I have an honorable mention here to close out my list of 5 struggling Mets. So the list was Sevy, Alonso, Nimmo, Martinez, Alvarez. The honorable mention is Jesse Winker. Really small sample size. He's played 6 games. He's 3 for 15. No reason to jump off a cliff just yet about his production and think, oh man, this guy's just going to be bad. But the approach hasn't looked good. He's grounding into double play balls, or at least today he did. I feel like it's happened multiple times. I could be wrong about that. But today was a killer one, because Carlos Mendoza grabs him off the bench in a spot which I think made some sense to grab him, not Jeff McNeil, because he has less versatility to your bench. Whereas Jeff McNeil, if something happens, I think that was in the 7th inning, or maybe that was the 6th inning. I think it was the 6th inning, right? So you still had a lot of game left, and I get wanting to keep Jeff McNeil there in case you need him at third base, at second base. You would have had to make a sort of double switch in some ways. You would have had to not only put Alvarez in the game for defense, clearly, but you would have had to make a subsequent move if you were going to bring Jeff McNeil in to keep him in the game, you would think. With that said, I'd like to see the Mets get a hit in that spot, and I didn't feel as confident in Jesse Winker as I do in Jeff McNeil right now. But the one thing you were hoping for, if 1 out, man on third base, just hit a fly ball. Hit a fly ball, get a run in. Chip away at it. And he hits into a double play ball. We'll see. Winker's got to be that impact bat that they brought him in for. He's got a chance to play a full game, I would imagine, at Coors Field on Wednesday with a righty on the mound. So hopefully it's his breakout performance, and he can start rolling from there. And that stands true for all these guys. You're playing at altitude, put up some crooked numbers in some of these innings, and hopefully still find a way to win a series. You win the next 2 games, you can forgive the Mets for dropping this one. But if they lose this series, and this road trip includes series losses to the Angels as well as the Rockies, and then the final leg of it is you got to face the Mariners pitching staff, which is elite, this could be a road trip that really dooms the Mets, and you'd hate to see that. So hopefully they can get things back on track. But they will be getting some reinforcements on the way soon. We're going to talk about the guys that are rehabbing from injury that could join the team in the coming weeks. Starling Marte being one of them. We'll get to that in just a minute. First, though, another word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Liquid IV. Get hydrated with electrolytes, essential vitamins, and clinically tested nutrients from the #1 powdered hydration brand in America, Liquid IV. What I love about Liquid IV is 3 things. For one, the convenience, right? You tear, you pour, you live more, as they say, with 1 stick plus 16 ounces of water, which will hydrate you better than water alone. But it's also, along with the convenience, the taste. I love the strawberry lemonade flavor. I've also recently started to get into the Popsicle Firecracker, which is a blend of lemon, lime, cherry, and raspberry, like those great popsicles that you can get in the ice cream stand during the summer. And the best part is the hydration, okay? Because you feel significantly more hydrated when you drink Liquid IV than just water alone. It provides 3 times the electrolytes of the leading sports drink and 8 essential vitamins and nutrients, always non-GMO, vegan, gluten-free, dairy-free, and soy-free. No more thirsty summers when you indulge in hydration with Liquid IV. Get 20% off your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com. Use the code MLB at checkout. That's 20% off your first order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code MLB at liquidiv.com. If you're an everyday listener to the show, make sure you become a Locked On Mets insider. This is our texting service where you get updates from me anytime news breaks on the Mets. You can ask me questions anytime. You can go back and forth through text. Also, you get the lineup graphic sent to your phone each day so you know who's in the starting nine without ever having to go on social media. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find the link in the episode description. Go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. Now in Syracuse today, Tyler McGill took the mound, pitched 5 innings, allowed 4 runs. So not a great start for McGill, but the guy who relieved them is somebody of great interest. Reed Garrett has seen his rehab advance to AAA. He came in, gave up a hit and a walk, but he struck out 3 to get through a scoreless inning. And Carlos Mendoza said he's feeling really strong, bounced back good after the outing. So it seems like Reed Garrett could be coming back in the not too distant future. Shintaro Fujinami got the save in that game. Just thought I'd mention that. Second straight strong appearance from Fujinami, who pitched 2 scoreless in his prior appearance, but the one before that he walked 4. So we'll see. Fuji's got to put together a couple weeks of good numbers before the Mets would trust bringing him up and first adding him back to the 40-man roster and then subsequently bringing him up and making him part of this team. He's got electric stuff, but I just don't know if we see him this year. Now, Sean Reed-Foley had a rough outing his last time out. I think we did talk about this on the show. Walked 3 of the 5 batters that he faced. Carlos Mendoza did not sound as optimistic on Sean Reed-Foley as he did on Garrett. Talked about him needing to be able to pitch back-to-backs and pitch, multiple innings potentially. And so they had to see how he bounces back. He's going to pitch on Wednesday. So we'll see how he looks in that outing. Mets will go from there. You could get him back soon, but I feel like Garrett's going to come back first now all of a sudden. And he's the guy that I would expect to be more effective when he does return. Daniel Nunez is up to playing catch at 90 feet. So that's usually the first sort of big test. See how he responds to that. And then eventually you get him on a mound for a bullpen, then maybe facing some live batters. And all of a sudden he's on a rehab assignment. There is a chance the Mets can get Nunez back by the end of this month. He'd obviously provide a very big lift if he pitches anything close to the way he did prior to the injury. The big news of the day is Starling Marte. He's going to begin a rehab assignment in Port St. Lucie on Wednesday. Now, he expects to be up in AA by the end of this week. Carlos Mendoza said he looks good. He feels good. And in a report, or not a report, but there's an article that Anthony Vicoma has where he updates all the different injured players. And in the article, he said that he could be in line to return when the Mets get home after this road trip. So next week, you could see Starling Marte back in the Mets lineup, which would be a big lift. I'm very curious how they would deploy him. Is he in a straight platoon with Jesse Winker, where he's only playing against left-handed pitching? You would think Marte would get a little bit more run than that. So whose playing time does he eat into? Tyrone Taylor potentially, where Taylor really becomes a 5th outfielder for this team. Harrison Bader a little bit. If you wanted to, you could go an all-offense outfield of Nimmo in center, Winker in left, Marte in right. But that would be a no-defense outfield. I don't think the Mets would go that far. We'll see. I mean, there's a world where Starling Marte just grabs his starting spot back and Jesse Winker is a left-handed bat off the bench. That could happen. I think they'll be careful to run Marte into the ground, especially having Winker. So I don't expect Starling Marte to play more than, I'd say, 4 games a week, 5 at the most. I think he's going to get multiple off days in between. Probably DH him a little bit, especially if JD Martinez isn't swinging it. That's another way to get Marte's bat in the lineup and see what happens. I imagine also this means less of Jeff McNeil in the outfield, more of him in the infield, which could cut into Jose Iglesias' playing time, if not even Mark Vientos' playing time, with Iglesias moving over and playing third. I'd imagine that we're just not going to see Jeff play against lefties when you get Marte back, because Iglesias should be out there, Vientos should be out there, Marte should be out there, guess the only way would be if you put Nimmo in center and McNeil in left. So that is still an option. If I had to guess, though, they'll keep playing a Bader or a Taylor against left-handed pitching in center field. If I had to do it based on what we've seen throughout the season, Jeff McNeil would really have to keep this hot streak going and force the Mets' hands to keep him in the lineup. And it's very funny that we're even wondering about Jeff McNeil's playing time when whatever it was 3 weeks ago, everyone was ready to just send this guy packing, and he has really turned it on. But the Mets are going to be a deeper team when they get Marte back. There's no doubt about it. You're replacing Ben Gamel, who's barely played, for Starling Marte, who still gives you a really good base stealing threat, even with the knee issues. A guy that can rake against left-handed pitching, which was going to be very much needed. I mean, it'd be great to have Marte in this series, to have him in the lineup tonight, have him in the final game of this series against the two lefties the Mets are going to face. That would have made a big difference. So I think that's going to definitely help this team. And I also believe that could just be a nice element to add to the team to maybe lighten the load for everybody else. All those guys we talked about who are struggling, the Nimmos, Martinez, Alonso, Alvarez, maybe just getting Marte back in the lineup, that might just take the pressure off everybody else. Not that he's going to change everything, not that he is alone the straw that stirs the drink, but sometimes it is uplifting to get a guy off the IL. And I think Marte will definitely provide some impact down the stretch, assuming he can stay on the field. And I think Garrett as well, honestly, to the bullpen. I mean, to be able to have Garrett, Budo, Maton with Edwin Diaz, that back end of the bullpen looks a lot better. First, though, you got to get your bullpen a lead. So hopefully the Mets will do that on Wednesday, turn this into a series against the Rockies, and get back on track. They still got a chance to have a winning road trip, but they're going to have to take these next two games because it's going to be a lot tougher going into Seattle over the weekend. Anyway, that's going to be all for today's edition of Locked On Mets. Appreciate all of you who tuned into the show. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. We're trying to get to 10,000 subs by the end of the season. So appreciate all of you who continue to subscribe. You follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen or your first watch every day. Now for your second watch, head over to YouTube and check out the first ever 24/7 streaming channel that covers everything in the world of sports with our local experts from each team and our league-wide experts from each league. You find Locked On Sports Today streaming 24/7 on YouTube and on Amazon Fire TV.